With 17 confirmed victories and 2 shared, Willie McKnight is among Canada's most illustrious fighter pilots from World War II. Serving with the legendary Douglas Bader in 242 Squadron of the British Royal Air Force, McKnight flew a Hawker Hurricane Mark I during the 1940 Battle of Britain. His Hurricane featured distinctive skeletal Grim Reaper fuselage art. Purportedly, McKnight himself did the work. Sadly, he was reported missing, presumed killed, after a marauding foray over France on January 12, 1941. Some 81 years later, another Hurricane, bearing a precise replica of McKnight's unique livery, made its first flight after a 16-year restoration. Owner Michael Potter, founder of Canada's storied vintage wings collection, bought the project in 2006 from Saskatchewan farmer, pilot, and legendary vintage military aircraft enthusiast Harry Whereat. This Hurricane is a Mark XII, built by Canadian Car and Foundry. Whereat had restored the aircraft himself to the stage where he flew it 1 or 2 times. Potter's Vintech Aviation Maintenance Organization took the Hurricane down to its bare bones. All non-period components and hardware, down to the minutest detail, were removed and replaced with either original parts or carefully crafted exact copies. The fuselage art was painstakingly reproduced from a photo of the original projected onto the side of the airplane. Pilot Dave Hadfield, who performed the first test flights on the McKnight Hurricane on April 23, 2022, calls it the most historically accurate Hurricane there is. AirVenture 2024 visitors got to see the McKnight Hurricane in all its vintage glory. AvWeb caught up with the stunning Hurricane in the Warbird area, and Vintage Wings' Pat Tenger took us on a thorough pre-flight walkaround.
Okay, so we usually start our walkarounds with the oil tank, because with these old engines you really want to make sure the oil level is topped right up. Yeah. From there, usually check and make sure that the exhaust stacks are good. Visual check, make sure there's no cracks. You'll notice here that we actually have the hand cranks for the starting. From there, make sure all your engine cowling fasteners are all done up, and then move around with the propeller. Make sure there's no big nicks on your blades, because rolling in grass and runway stones can get kicked up and whatnot. Make sure the spinner's on, nice and tight. You're always checking for oil leaks. Make sure your intake's nice and clean. Again, on this side, double checking everything. And then you're always looking at leading edge, landing gear. Make sure your tire wear is good. Then you can dive in here as well, take a good look around. And then again, also check in the intake for the rad. Checking the intake for the rad to make sure no debris has been kicked in blocking it from cooling. You're always just kind of making sure nothing's loose, everything's holding on together. Take a look for any dents. Nothing's been kicked up into the wing area. Once you're doing the cockpit, you check to make sure your nav lights are working. Give the wing a shake because you don't want those to fall off. You usually go around, make sure all your flight controls are working good. Full range of motion. And again, visual for fasteners, make sure everything's attached. Down here we have the flaps. So you have them open, take a good visual look at everything, make sure it's where it's supposed to be. So this does have split flaps, but it is operated by one hydraulic ram, which is on the port side, and then connected through various tubes and U-joints in through the system. So we do get a lot of questions about this plate up on the fuel tank cover, and that was for a glare shield so the pilot wouldn't be blinded by the exhaust coming out of the exhaust stacks from the fire. One interesting fact about the markings here, the G5 designated the factory that it was built at, but we didn't know the contract numbers that was actually on Willie McKnight's aircraft. So these are actually birthdays for people who are involved in the building and the owner. As you can see, a fabric covered aircraft with wood and then sheet metal in critical areas. The earlier Hurricanes had the Mark I, first produced, had fabric covered wings, and then later Mark I's came out with stress skin construction. The whole back of the aircraft is basically fabric, which made it easy during wartime that if it was hit with a bullet, you could just dope on a new patch and be ready to go in a matter of minutes. There's a few data tags that always indicate which component, like major components, and then which aircraft they came off of, so it was easier to track. The other ones are under. Working around to the tail. Again, you're just making sure nothing's getting loose. All the bearings are nice and tight. These actually are just brass bushings and not ball bearing. On here you can see that the cables are actually bolted directly onto the rudder horns for control. So you don't want them actually too tight because you will wear out your bushings and you will make the controls really stiff for the pilot. So then you want to make sure your tail wheel's in good condition. Again, you don't want anything to be loose down here. And the oleo is actually internal in here. So when you go to change this, knock the bolt out. There's a pin, and the whole the oleo is about this long that slides out of the landing gear leg. So when we get up here, you have your hand hold and a footstep. Just pull it down, it opens right up, so you can climb up in it.